Welcome back to First Time Programmer. This is FTP6, PageKey Tech. I'm Steve, and we're talking about Node.js and NPM and why you need them. We've already talked about how to build websites from scratch with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and a little bit about how to manage your code base with Git and how to share it with others. Now, JavaScript is a huge language, so I think it makes sense as this is your next step, which is how do we move beyond just programming in the browser? How do we get to the server? How do we start writing some command line applications or automating things on our system that we want to do? I think Node.js and NPM is the gateway to that. Hence, it's our next step. So the big idea here is do build on other people's code. Don't reinvent the wheel if you can avoid it. But don't try to do it without a package manager, which in the case of the JavaScript ecosystem is Node and NPM. There is a way to do it that way, and maybe some people would recommend starting that way so you can see it, but I don't. You can hand paste links to scripts into your HTML file to use them from CDNs or content distribution networks, and this is a fast way to do something, I suppose, but it quickly gets out of hand, and many tools that you would like to use are not even available in this way. So if you're using something like Bootstrap or something, just one single framework, I guess it's okay. But I'm not even going to get into that because I think it's way better in the long run to just learn these tools now, because it will open the entire world up to you in so many different ways. They can handle packaging things up and distributing them and all that stuff. It's way better to just do it this way. So with that, what are we working with here? What are the definitions? We have three entities to talk about. Node.js is the JavaScript runtime, and it's basically what lets you run JavaScript, the language, which was originally designed for browsers, on your computer as a server application or as something that's just helping you in your day-to-day as a developer, as just a regular program on your computer. And this is enabled by I think it's the V8 JavaScript engine, whatever it is. It lets you run JavaScript like it's a computer programming language rather than something built into your browser. NPM is Node Package Manager. This lets you install other people's code, manage packages, things like that. Yarn is an alternative to NPM. Some people think it's faster. Don't want to start a war here. It's really, research it yourself. I try to use Yarn now because I've heard it's faster. I like the way it looks a little bit better when it's doing its loading screen and all that stuff. Basically, you can pick whichever one you want, but pick one. Don't alternate between the two when you're managing packages. So what do we mean by server-side JavaScript? Before, as I've already mentioned, JavaScript was just embedded in web pages. It couldn't do anything else outside of your browser. It's just managing that HTML and CSS, the behavior of web pages. With the JavaScript runtime that lets you run JavaScript programs on your computer outside of a browser, you can still do web pages with JavaScript. You can also do command line applications and servers. You can transpile code from TypeScript to JavaScript. You can have tools that copy code into different places for you, copy code into files so that you can serve them up or generate static websites. There's so many things that you can do with it. It's really endless, basically. And it's well suited for parallelism, so if you have multi-threaded applications or something like that, if you want to do tasks in the background, it's easy to kick it off with async programming. Really, it's a whole world of JavaScript. It's one of the top languages right now, and for good reasons. So the package.json file we will see shortly, and lock files. Every Node.js package has a package.json file, and that defines things such as the name of the package, the description, who is the author of the package, where's the code stored, metadata, right? It also defines a list of dependency packages that you need to run this package. Now, as you develop applications, you're not really developing a library for other people to use. You're developing an application. It's not a package, but you'll still have a package.json file. So it really is a package, and you list your dependencies. You also list scripts. We'll get into that too. Either way, you can generate a package.json file with Npm Init, and then use npm or yarn to track your dependencies. And you can clone a project on a different machine and instantly install all the same dependencies. So package.json is really your list of everything that you need to run this project. Other people's code that you need to install first before you can run whatever you're working on. key npm commands. Npm Init, we already talked about, generates your package.json for the first time. Npm Install or yarn add, but you can look into using yarn on your own time. Npm Install is, if you write it completely by itself, it's going to look at package.json and install everything. And it creates a node modules folder, and that's where it's installing everything. So the node modules folder can contain a lot of stuff. You should add this to your git ignore file so it's not committed to git. Do not commit node modules to git. Instead, you should run npm install on a machine that, if you're running it for the first time, run npm install to get all the dependencies. That's it. Now, if you want to add or remove dependencies to your package.json file, you don't have to edit the file directly. npm or yarn will do it for you. You can use npm install, and there are a number of variants of this. I think by default it saves it, but you'd have to look into that. If you want to install something for the whole system, not save it in your package.json file, you use npm install -- global. And this is something where it's a command line application. It's just a tool you want to use. It's not part of your application. This is the case for yarn. I think the way that you install yarn is npm install -- global yarn. And then you get the yarn command that you can use anywhere. Now, that's an edge case. That's not something that you're usually doing. Usually you do that once or twice, Something that is your day-to-day flow is you find a package that you want to use, and then you're going to do npm install -- save, which will add it to your package.json file as something that you absolutely need to have installed before you can run your package. An alternative is to save -dev, and the only difference there is it puts it in the dev dependencies section, and keeping that logically separate can eventually help you speed up your production application by only installing the regular dependencies and not the dev helper dependencies when you're running in production, where you want to be really fast. So if thousands and thousands of people are accessing your website, it matters to keep it fast versus when you're developing on your local machine and you're just testing. Npm Start is a shortcut for npm run start, and npm run anything looks for scripts in package.json. So depending on what framework you're using or what tools you have going on, the commands that you need to run a server or do anything else really will vary. However, it can be built into npm, so you don't have to think about, oh, this is an Express project, I need to run Express start to start the server. You can just run npm start and make sure that you notate in your package.json that start is linked to Express start, and you're good to go. So it keeps the interface very simple and uniform for people between npm packages. You don't have to think too much when you're switching between projects and technologies. Whew, okay, that was a lot of talking. Let's do a demonstration of how this works. We're going to install NVM. NVM is Node Version Manager, which lets you switch between different versions of npm and Node.js. I'd recommend going this route. You can also just follow the instructions for installing the latest Node.js, but I've come to really like NVM because you can easily switch between versions. So if you work on a bunch of different projects, maybe certain projects require a certain version of Node, whatever. Enough talking. We're also going to start up a JavaScript package and write a Hello World application in Node.js, and you can see it in action. And I'd also say, I also go over how to install NVM in my Create React app video, which I'll put a link to. So check that out too. You might like that. And let's get into the demo. If you haven't already, consider joining the PageKey Tech Discord, where you can discuss projects and ideas, ask questions, and meet fellow people interested in tech and programming. So remember from last time, we had GitLab up. Open up gitlab.com, and you should be logged into your account if you're not logged in. And what I'm going to do for this time around is create an entirely new repository. So I'm going to hit Create Project and create a blank project. And I'm going to say FTP6. Description, Node.js and npm. I'm going to keep it private, and don't worry about the deployment target. I'm going to uncheck initialize project with README. That's just my preference. And I'm going to hit create project. Now, we can clone it using this guy. So I'm going to open up a terminal and do exactly that. I'm going to paste it in there, git clone and it created an FTP6 folder for us. So I'll cd FTP6. Now git status, we are on branch master, we have no commits. We have to create our initial commit. Let's first switch to VS Code. So, okay, I have our new FTP6 folder open, and I can hit Control $mark to open the terminal. You know, these two guys to open the terminal, and then we are good to go. There's nothing here except for the .git folder. Since we just cloned it, the remote is already set up, so we have an origin remote, which is great. So installing NVM, just type install NVM on Google, go here, and follow the instructions. I'm not gonna go through this. The Create React app video I mentioned does actually show this, but basically you just paste this in, and you add this to your .bashrc file, if you're on Linux, and I don't know, it might be a little different for Windows, but it's pretty straightforward. I'm not going to go through it. So now that we're in VS Code and we have everything set up, we can do Npm Init, and it's going to start asking us some questions. FTP6 is a fine package name for this. Version 1's fine. Description, I mean, you don't have to put a description. I'll just put something real quick. FTP6, we learn about Node.js and Npm. Okay. Entry point index, don't worry about it. Just hit enter. Test command, just hit enter for now. Git repository, that's fine. Hit enter. Keywords, enter, 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 enter. Is this okay? Yes. Okay, we now have a package.json file that it generated for us, and it contains all this metadata in JSON format. It's well formatted, and we're set to go. You'll notice that it has one script. So we can do npm run test to run the test script, and it says no test specified. So that's good. We'll come back to that a little later. For now, let's create our index.js so that we can create our hello world. So I'm going to touch index.js and open that up in VS Code. And really we just have to do console.log hello node.js. Save it, and we can do node index.js, and it runs. Now we can also, in our package.json, add a script called start and do node index.js. This is what I was talking about, where you can have different ways of running a project, but it's nice if start does something meaningful in every project. Now if we do npm run start, it does it. If we do start 2, that's not defined, so we get some errors. So you can start to see what I mean. So good work, you just ran JavaScript outside of your browser as a command line application. In the next tutorial, you'll notice we didn't install any dependencies in this tutorial. You'll get to see some of that in the next tutorial, where we talk about Express.js, which is going to let us set up an API, a very basic API server, a web server, using Node.js. So, hope this was a helpful tutorial. Thank you for watching. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, consider subscribing, liking, and joining the PageKey Tech Discord.